Welcome back. Are you ready for our first model building problem? Remember that we're taking the training wheels off, and from now on you'll be creating your templates from scratch. So it's very important that you understand proper model building techniques, and to go over those techniques you might want to consider going back and watching the model building video. So let's get started. You should have opened the Canvas website. You should have found and printed any directions for the problem. In addition, you should have downloaded the appropriate Excel file. Remember that when you complete these assignments, you should be uploading one file, just one. And of course, as always, you'll seek out help if you need it. So the objectives of this problem are to use proper model building techniques to create a computerized trial balance, to create a template that's flexible enough to be used on a repetitive basis, and of course, as always, we'll be creating a chart. So just to refresh your memory, you'll be starting from scratch. You'll be the artist and you'll be looking at a blank Canvas template. You will be awarded points now from 0 on up. Before, we started with 20 points with deductions for things that were done incorrectly. So now we're starting with 0 points and you have to work your way up to 20. So a perfect 20-point paper will consider the planning issues that were discussed previously, will have the correct documentation, will be complete and answer all parts of the problem, will be accurate and prepared in accordance with GAAP or accepted accounting principles, will be nice in appearance and pleasing to the eye. And I want you to notice that because we're creating our own templates from scratch, I'll be paying particular attention to the appearance of your template. If you do something in 10 minutes, it's going to show. If you take the time to create this the way it was intended to, you'll pay particular attention to the details. And finally, the other thing that I'll be grading you heavily on is the flexibility of your template. In other words, can someone pick up your template and use it in future months or years without having to go in and adjust the section? Also, flexibility, a big issue with that depends on how you set it up. In other words, is your template something that should be using a data section, answer section type format? And what that means is, can the user isolate all changes to the data section so that the answer section 100% completes itself on its own? So again, when we do a trial balance, you may want to review the rules of debits and credits. So I thought I would put a few slides up here just to refresh your memory in case you're a little rusty on accounting. So on the trial balance, all balances are assumed to have normal balances. And what that means is the normal balance of any account is the side that receives the plus or the increase. So here's just a very brief review of those normal balances in case you're a little bit rusty. Assets always have a normal balance of a debit. Liabilities and the owner's capital account always have normal balances of a credit. The owner's drawing account is a strange account. It's called a contra equity, and because of that, its normal balance is a debit or contrary to the normal equity balance. And then revenue accounts always have credits, and expense accounts always have debits. So I threw this slide in just to give you a little overview of what you learned in Accounting 100. So here's the basic steps to preparing a trial balance. Of course, we always want to use a proper heading, and that heading will include 3 lines: who, what, and when. The second thing we'll do is list the accounts in the appropriate order, which would be the chart of account order, or in the same order that they would appear in a regular financial statement. Then we'll enter the balance of each account in the appropriate debit or credit column, and that's where that slide I just showed you may come in handy. Then you'll total the debits and credits on the trial balance. You'll compare those totals and hopefully they will be equal. Remember that the sole purpose for a trial balance is to ensure the equality of debits and credits before we start preparing the financial statements. So this is a pretty basic template, probably the easiest one that we've worked on so far, and that's to kind of ease you into the model building process. So here's what a completed trial balance might look like. So again, you'll notice that the first three lines are the who, what, and when. You'll notice that the accounts are listed in chart of account order, meaning all the assets are listed first, then the liabilities, then the equities, then the revenues, and then the expenses. And within each category, the assets are listed in order of liquidity. That's why cash is always first and accounts receivable is usually right near the top, because those are highly liquid accounts. And things like equipment fall down on the farthest line of the asset chain because many times there's title issues, and so those types of plant assets are not usually too liquid. So there's just a brief overview. You'll notice there's dollar signs on the first and last items in each column, and you'll notice that there's single underlines before a computation and double underlines on the very bottom part of the trial balance. So let's get started and work on some Excel. So the first part of any template, I should see the appropriate documentation. That means you should have your name. Here's my name. You should have the name of the file, and you should have a description of what the file is doing. In other words, a template should stand on its own 2 feet. I shouldn't have to sit there and guess what the purpose of this template is. And if you wind up calling your file a different name, you should update that here in the file name. And you might even want to be more specific and even write in file name. And right now I'm going to call mine problem 9. If I change my mind, I may go back and adjust that template. So again, we want to plan it out. If you look at your listing of accounts, it looks like they gave us the accounts in alphabetical order, which is kind of strange, but that's the way this company does things. So as I'm planning this out, I want to think of the things that I expect to change and include those things in the data section. And then items that I expect to stay static or not change, those would be located in the answer section. And in a perfect template, everything in the answer section should recompute on its own. So I'm going to start off by definitely using a data section, and this is where I'm going to ask the user to input things that may change. And the first thing that I know that will probably change from month to month is the third line of that heading. So someplace up here, I'm going to put a cell that says date, and I will expect the user to put that date in the cell. So you might even want to consider putting a border there, or a line there, so that someone knows that they're expected to enter the date there. And I'm going to leave myself plenty of room in the data section. I'm not going to input all of these accounts. I'm only going to input maybe the first 6 accounts or so to give you an idea of what it would look like. So while I enter the first few accounts, I'm going to pause this and come back to you in just a minute. Okay, so as you can see, I've set up my data section to save a little time by inputting the first 6 or so accounts. I have a column heading. Remember, you never want to leave anything undescribed in a template. So I have account name. Over here I have amount. I put the first 6 accounts in. They're in alphabetical order. Now I'm going to enter the amounts. 300, 550, 250, 150, 520, and 1020. Those are the first few accounts. Sorry for the noise in the background. I'm cooking dinner and the rice cooker is telling me that it's done. Sorry about that. So here when I start getting into larger numbers, I notice that my format's ugly. In other words, I want a format that's going to use commas there. So I'm going to go click the Select All box. And you may even want to change the size of your font right now. So by hitting the Select All, you can change everything in the template. I'm going to experiment and try a little bit bigger of a font, maybe size 16. And then while I'm at it, while I still have the Select All button, I'm going to choose a format that's more pleasing to the eye. Maybe that's a comma style format, but I don't want these decimal places because I don't have any cents. So I'll go ahead and use the decrease decimal to get rid of those decimals. And you can see that that number looks a whole lot better this way. So there's the start of my data section. And again, I will eventually go and center this account name over the titles, but I usually will save that for the end when I know how big my template's going to be. But in the interest of time, in case you've forgotten how to center something, you highlight the area that you want to center it over. You go to the Alignment tab. You can explode that ribbon here. And under the text alignment, you're going to choose Center Across Selection. And that'll put it right smack dab in the area that you highlighted. So that just looks better to me. And you might want to consider underlining things. That goes to the appearance part of the problem. And because I want to break up the lines, maybe I'll even insert a small column right here and make that a skinny column, get rid of the line that's in there, maybe put a line under this one. And again, these are all things that you can do later when you're working on the appearance. As I'm demonstrating this, I just wanted to show you a few things that come to mind. Okay, so I know I haven't entered all the accounts yet, but in the interest of time, I'm going to start my answer section. And this is where I expect the template to recompute on its own. So ideally, all I need to do is to have the user go in and change the data section here. And if I do this correctly, 100% of my answer section will compute on its own. So let me show you what I mean. I don't expect the name of the company to change, so I'll go ahead and enter that. This one's called Macro Company. I don't expect the name of the document to change. This one's called a trial balance. But I do expect the date to change. So because of that, instead of typing the date in, I want to put a cell reference to the data section where my date will be entered. There's several ways to do this. Let me describe the easiest. Okay, so since we expect the date to change, I'm going to put a cell reference to where the date is located. So up here in my data section, underneath the date, I want to put the date that we'll be using. In the problem, I believe the first date given to you was June 30th, so I'm going to type that in. June 30th, I'll use the current year. And you'll notice that Excel turned that into a weird number. That's actually Excel converting that date to a formula. I don't want that to show up as a formula, so I'm going to go format that cell by exploding my format button. I'm going to choose a date here, and I'm going to choose a date format that I like. I happen to like it spelled out in words, so I'm going to choose this one. That doesn't mean you have to choose it, but that's the one I'm going to choose. So once I have that formatted correctly, I'm going to come down here, and by the way, you'll notice that that date on my computer is in E6. So I'm going to come down here, and on my answer section, I'm going to have a reference to cell E6. Okay, now you'll notice the same thing happened here. It turned it into a funky formula. So I'm going to go format that again as a date. You can pick a date format that you like. I happen to like it spelled out on my own work, so I'm going to go pick that. And now you have a flexible template. In other words, if I go up here and change this date in the next month to be July 31st, 2017, let's go see what happened. I entered that up there in the data section, and you'll notice that the answer section automatically changed. That's called being flexible. I don't want my user to have to come down here at all in the answer section. So having demonstrated that, let me turn this back to June 30th, the original date. And down here in the answer section, you'll notice it also changed. And I realized that this heading needs to be centered, but I do that as the very last step because I'm not quite sure yet how big my template's going to be. So now I'm getting ready to create the trial balance. And again, we know that the reason we do a trial balance is to ensure that the debits equal the credits. So I'm going to come down here and set this up. The great thing about Excel is we can erase if we need to. So I'm going to have a column for my debits, and I'm going to have a column for my credits. And I want them to be about the same size, so I'm going to make this a little bit wider here. And over here I'm going to have the account name. I might want to go back and center that later, we'll see. But here's the key to Excel. As much possible, use cell references. It also helps prevent spelling mistakes. So the very first account on a trial balance is going to be cash. So I could type it in if I wanted, or I could just hit the equal sign and go up here and grab my cash and press enter. And then the most important part is you as the user decide that it is a debit balance. Cash has a normal debit balance. So I'm going to come to the debit column. I'm going to press the equals button, and I'm going to slide up here and grab my cash. And the next account right after cash is going to be accounts receivable. So I'm going to press equals. I'm going to scroll up to the top here. I'm going to go grab accounts receivable and press enter. And I know that accounts receivable is also an asset, so I'm going to press equals, and I'm going to go grab that 550. Okay, and you're going to keep doing that until you have a nice looking trial balance. So someplace down the way, and just so that I can keep it on the screen, I'm going to do it here. We know that at the bottom we better see a pair of double underlines, so I'm going to come in and put my lines in there, and I'm going to continue working on this until I have it balanced, and then I'm going to clean it up. Once you know how big your template is, you can go center things. So it's always a good idea to put your data, when possible, in the A column. And that way when you're done, it makes it real easy to center. So I'm going to center this now that I have an idea of how big my template's going to be over that area. I'm going to go to the Home tab into the alignment part. I'm going to hit the explode button, and I'm going to center it across the selection. Okay, that put it right smack dab in the middle. Again, you're going to be evaluated on the appearance, so think about ways that you could make that look better. Maybe I'll try putting a border around it. You might even want to try adding some color, although in our labs at school we don't have color, so you might want to experiment with different shades of gray if you encounter someone that's using a black and white printer. So again, don't worry about it if you don't have color. Use a shade of gray just to kind of set it apart from the rest. And here's our account name. I have my debits and credits. I'm going to center those so they come out nice. I expect my numbers to be right aligned like all numbers are. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to sum up from the top to the bottom. And of course, I have a lot more data than what my screen is showing. And once I get that formula, I'll copy it over. As the example showed in the slide, it's usually customary to put a $sign on each account. Not on each account, my apologies. In the first account in each column and at the bottom. And there's several ways to do that. I'm going to go hit this $sign and get rid of the decimals, and I'll do that here also. The rest of the numbers should flow in a nice manner. And then you always want to make sure that your work prints out appropriately. So I usually have the print preview button. I hope you can see that on the screen. I add that to my quick access toolbar. So once I have this template completed, I'm going to hit the print preview button. And this gives me a rough idea of what my template looks like. Right now you see it's on 1 of 2 pages. I'm not sure if you can see that down here at the bottom, but it says page 1 of 2, and if I scroll down I'll see that right now my work is falling over 2 pages and I don't want that. So there's lots of ways to change that. Probably the easiest way is to hit the little page setup button and put that I want to fit it to 1 page wide here. There's a little bubble, and then I'll press OK. And then I'll notice that right now my template's kind of ugly looking because of these yellow lines here that don't match up. I can probably get rid of some of that. So before I print it, I'm going to go work on cleaning it up. And when I clean it up, I'll come back over here and maybe consider erasing some of the formats in there. Let me see. I'll hit the little eraser and choose clear all. Now let me go look at my print preview again. And I still got some stuff over there that I need to go take care of higher up. So I will come over here and erase that because I don't need it. We'll try print previewing it again. Okay, it's looking better. I have a little bit more space on this side, so I might want to go fix that description so that I won't have all this white space over here. That's what I mean about appearance. So again, one thing I expect to see on your template is when you turn your template into formulas by pressing the Control tilde in your answer section, I should see 100% of the numbers cell referenced. Okay, so for example, down here I'm going to press Control and tilde. That turns us into formulas. I expect to see formulas 100% in the answer section and even on the date right here. That means that your user doesn't have to go into the answer section at all to fix their work. Everything is isolated in the data section, and that's what makes for a great template. So I'm going to click Control tilde again to put it back to the numbers. And that about wraps up what I wanted to show you. I expect you guys to spend some time getting this to look nice. It should be pleasing to the eye. And even though you aren't turning in hard copies of printouts, I will be looking at your work to make sure that it does print out in appropriate places and that it looks nice. So after you've done the template, make sure that you've completed the problem according to the directions. Double and triple check the requirements before uploading the template. Make sure your work prints out properly. After double and triple checking that you've completed all parts of the problem, upload the one file. Make sure you have the necessary tabs, and as always, check to make sure if there are any discussion posts that apply to this problem. Again, if you need help, by now you should know where to get it. I'm literally here waiting to help you. I love helping people, but you have to reach out because I don't know when you get into trouble unless you let me know. So on that note, I look forward to receiving your first real model building problem. I think you'll find a new exciting part of the class is in front of us now. I'm kind of tired of using other people's templates to do the work. So this is your time to be able to show some creativity and to make sure that you're fulfilling all parts of the model building requirements. So go back before you submit it, go back and look at that checkoff list of what I expect a nice 20-point template to look like. Until next time, I look forward to working with you.